You're listening to the Banrion Show on Radio Trina. Today is Tuesday, so we're going to have our Banrion chat about what's happened in the EU. I am absolutely heartbroken for the 17.4 million who voted for Brexit, and the Supreme Court is stopping what the Prime Minister in the United Kingdom has asked for the Parliament to be closed. It's absolutely shocking. It's just trying to stop the British leaving the EU, and everything has been thrown at the British to try and stop them, and it's quite shocking. So the Supreme Court makes a deal harder, and it really does make it. And Boris makes that point because now that the EU see that the Parliament that the courts can overrule the Parliament's judge and even the Prime Minister's view, then you're putting democracy in a very strange place. And I'll talk about Ireland in a minute and how that happened to us. But the Irish puppets, the EU puppets, delighted. Our media is delighted. Our government is delighted that this has happened, which is quite shocking. Really, really bad for democracy. A very bad day for democracy. Courts should stick out of politics. It shouldn't have anything to do with it. It's actually really, really bad. So they go as far as listening to the Irish media calling the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom a buffoon. And they don't get it. That over 17.4 million people voted for Brexit. The largest vote of all time in the UK. This isn't a small deal. This is huge numbers who voted and who haven't changed their mind. So this is quite shocking that they want to overturn it and stop it. And this party called the Lib Democrats. Now literally there's nothing democratic about wanting to overthrow a people's voice and what the people voted for. The biggest vote ever in the United Kingdom. Paddy Ashdown, who has died, who was the head of this party, when the Brexit was about to vote, when the British were about to vote in 2016, he said the sovereignty voice of the British people must be listened to, because at this stage he really did believe that that the British were going to vote to stay in the EU. And when you think about Democrats, part of their names, they should just drop that. I was actually listening to a comedy, British comedy. It's like saying McDonald's saying we're going to keep the Big Mac meal, we're just going to get rid of the meat and we're still going to call it a Big Mac. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, it's part of their name. It's not part of other parties. But they don't see hypocrisy in just absolutely... It's a disgrace. It's crazy that they should think that they have the right to overturn the people's voices in Britain, which is really, really crazy. And, they go on to say that they want a general election. And then, obviously they think if the general election, they win the general election and they get to stop Brexit, then that's democratic and nobody can, stop that. But if Boris Johnson goes on to win and gets a no vote, then as far as they're concerned, they have a right to stop that. It's just complete hypocrites. Really is absolutely crazy. So unless they basically like the vote, it's typical lefty bullshit. Unless we agree with your thoughts or your views, then that's okay. But if we don't agree with it, we will shout you down. We will do everything to intimidate you, to do everything to stop, because we don't like it. We don't really represent democracy, because unless democracy is what we want it to represent, then we don't really represent it at all. And it's a kind of a strange thing, because she doesn't realise that if she did get to overthrow this, that in later times that any vote should and could be overthrown. If you can overthrow the biggest vote ever done in the United Kingdom, 17.4 million, if you can overthrow their voice and tell them, like they did with the Irish people, now we were a smaller country, that they didn't really understand, or they didn't really know, or things have changed, or they don't really still understand what it's all about. And they did this with the Irish. If you can overthrow that, really in the future you can overthrow anything. And I'll be talking about the Dublin Agreement and what they've done with that. So it's absolutely a disgrace, and they don't seem to think that they just stop this vote because they don't like it. But in the future, everything else has to be represented unless they don't like it. It's absolutely crazy. The left socialisms in Europe at the moment is destroying Europe and destroying their own countries. It's quite shocking. And the people's voices aren't being respected. And by the Irish government and the Irish media, the British voice is not being respected at all. They've decided to call them racist. They've decided to call them... And little to the majority of Irish people, particularly in the media, have very short memories. Like in 2002 and 2009, when Irish people voted no to Lisbon, no to Nice, they were all called the same things. They were like, you're going to die in the famine, this, that, the other thing, island of hate. We were all called the same names. You didn't know, you're too stupid to know, you don't really understand what the vote was about. And when they were blackmailed and bullied into voting again, and in the end, they kind of said, look, keep voting out, so what's the problem with Europe? And they basically said to us, there's 26 of us, there's only one of you, so, your vote doesn't really count about your own country because there's more of us than there is you. This is not democratic at all. This is absolutely the opposite to it. So they're bullied. So they signed in something called the Dublin Agreement, which has been pretty much done away with. They're not even pretending. So that they brought them into false charges, and you ever hear people saying, they get them to vote. The reason why we've changed our vote because the EU said that they would change all these clauses. No, they didn't. They changed them for a second. This Dublin Agreement. They're talking about the Dublin Agreement being changed. We're in the PESCO army. We're in the EU army. We're no longer a neutral country. Abortion is in. Migrants are coming into the country from all over the place. There's no stopping it. Majority of the time, you're a minority in your own country, and more spreading everywhere. So none of the actual things that was down in the Dublin Agreement is being kept, and that if a migrant, that they must, the first place where they land, the safest place where they land, they must stay there. They can't be coming all the way to Ireland. That's all being changed. Now, there's 4 EU states that want an automatic refugee relocation. So this is to just scrap away with the Dublin Agreement. So anybody in these 4 strong countries can shove them off to countries like Ireland with tiny populations and overthrow the indigenous race. And this is destroying Europe and destroying each and every country, and particularly Ireland will be overrun. It will be an Islamic country within a very short space of time. It's absolutely a disgrace what is happening in Europe, and I'm delighted the British are fighting back with this EU, and the fact that they've decided to steal the name of Europe. The EU is not Europe. Europe is a continent, and a wonderful continent. But it's been destroyed by the EU and all the EU puppets, particularly Irish, disgusting, horrible government. It's destroying Europe, absolutely destroying Ireland and its indigenous race. It almost sees its indigenous race as second-class citizens. Leo said at one point that immigrants work harder and more likely to pay taxes. And this is because he's a half-breed, he's half Indian, and his love is probably more for Indian. He has a complete hate for the Irish. And he really does. He just never felt he's Irish. He's felt he's Indian and gay. Not that there's any problem with either of those. But the fact is that he became a Taoiseach of a country he could not stand the indigenous population. And he set out to destroy them. And that is very much what he's doing. But there's so many leftists and socialists in this country who absolutely hate their race and hate their culture, and blame everything on the Catholic Church, that they're quite happy that this is happening. So they're absolutely disgusted that England tried to get freedom and independence back. So they want to use everything they can on it, and the Irish are quite happy to be the EU puppet. The Irish government is quite happy. Leo goes on to say, the people were saying that the French and the Germans would, throw us under the bus. That didn't happen. Of course it didn't happen. They're quite happy to use the useful idiots of the Irish government. Well, they're not. They've got a good jobs in Brussels after this destruction of this country. So why would they, throw us under the bus? No, they will throw us under the bus when they're good and ready. When they have used us to the finest, they will push out to try and stop Brexit, because there's huge money coming from the British, so it makes sense for them to stop it. And when they can't stop it, of course Ireland will be pushed under the bus, and they are after this big job in Brussels. It's absolutely shocking. Not to forget, judges shouldn't be a part of politics. It's absolutely a disgrace that this decision was made against the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. I mean, they should really make it, if this is okay for people to do that, then Jean Miller should have, people like Jean Miller who brought this to court, they have their say as an individual. Then so should 17.4 million leavers get the same legal representation in High Court to demand that the Parliament delivers Brexit, even if it's a no deal. And it's shocking that a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom had to go to court to try and give the people what they voted for, what they've asked for. And the small minority is overthrowing the majority of British people, the highest vote. This isn't a small little vote that they didn't think about. There was 17.4 million. Let's get that into our heads. This is huge numbers. And they're trying to overthrow that. That's a majority of people in the United Kingdom. Now people say, they were thick, they were racist, they were this, they were that. You can't say the majority of Britain were this, they were that. You're just being completely ignorant to their voices. And that is not democracy. And it has not been held for a long time since the EU has come about. Since Ireland had to re-vote along with other countries. If you didn't get the right vote, you're made re-vote until you get the right answer. And that is wrong. We don't trust you. We don't really want your voice. We're going to ask you, but if you give the wrong answer, you're going to do it again, or we will just try and just stop the whole thing, or we'll give you a little piece of paper called whatever agreement. We got a Dublin agreement, and nothing has been kept on that. Absolutely nothing. And they're openly about what they want to change. So the Irish population will be a minority and will disappear within a generation unless the people wake up and see that what the media and the Irish government is doing to this country. Now maybe there's so much leftists that actually are happy that the indigenous race will disappear, and the language, the culture and the heritage and everything about this land will disappear, and it will just become like a grey area like the rest of the world. There is no thing. Even that idiot Charlie Flanagan, who comes out with saying Ireland is a country of immigrants. No, they aren't. No, we aren't. We're a native population of the indigenous race, majority. Up to now, until you completely destroy it. By 2020, your project 2020, Leo's project, we will be a minority, the indigenous race. It will disappear. And it's quite sad and shocking that any other indigenous race, there would be uproar and people would be, particularly the left would be, oh no, that's wrong. But because they're Irish, nobody cares. Or because they're a white race, nobody cares. Every indigenous race should come first in their own land, regardless of their colour. They should come first in their own country. Thank you for listening to the Banrion Show on Radio Trina. We will be talking to you tomorrow about Islam. Islam will be coming. I will have a chat with you tomorrow about Islam. Thank you very much for listening.